you own it. Let every mile bring a smile, yeah.
Welcome back. Roto Life Podcast. Bennett and McKay. We've got a cool episode this week.
Mm-hmm.
This is an interesting one. I don't know.
It's a bit vulnerable. I mean, they're all a bit vulnerable. This one's a bit above average vulnerable.
I think so, yeah. So we went to South America.
Yeah, we spent the fall, like the end of the year 2023 in South America.
Yeah.
We spent, I don't know, we were gone 6-7 weeks, something like that.
Yeah.
And we spent most of them
Working in Argentina. Like, we were still working, doing
we were
our thing, but we were exploring
Buenos
Argentina.
Aires.
Yeah.
And we loved it. We'll talk more about that probably in another episode.
But we also did a pit stop. Halfway through, we spent a week in Peru.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we're going to talk about in this episode.
Yeah.
So what did we get up to?
We went to Peru for a really specific reason.
Very specific. We didn't advertise it. We didn't talk a lot about this.
No, we didn't really tell anybody we did it until after we did it. And even then, there's a lot of people who are going to hear about it for the first time on this podcast. Most of our friends and family have no idea that we even did this. But we went to Peru.
Went to the Sacred Valley.
Yeah, the Sacred Valley
so
of Peru.
it's like the Andes.
Yep.
The Andes Mountains. There's this valley near Cusco.
Yep.
Peru.
Cusco.
We went to Machu Picchu. That was a bucket list item. That was really cool. We'll talk a little bit about that. But the most time we're going to spend is going to be talking about the retreat that we went to. So we went to a retreat in the Sacred Valley in the mountains of Peru, and we took ayahuasca, an ayahuasca retreat.
Mm-hmm. So why did we do that, Bennett? Let's back up a little bit.
Yeah. I think, well, we're on this personal growth journey, and, you know, I didn't really know a lot about ayahuasca. I had heard about it and heard things like, you know, it can be really powerful in understanding who you are and on your personal growth journey, and it can heal past traumas, and it's like having 10 years of therapy in one session. And I heard all kinds of things about ayahuasca, and so I thought that it would be an interesting to try to look into.
And we heard about it from lots of different people. We saw lots of different documents. Like Will Smith talked about it. Matthew McConaughey. We listened to both of their books, and
specifically once we heard about it, we went looking for documentaries to really understand what is it that we're thinking about getting into here.
Yeah, totally. And so, you know, as part of this journey, we decided we would give it a go and see.
But we didn't take it lightly, and I think it's important, if this is meant for you or you're meant for ayahuasca, that you understand that it's not something to just take lightly. I think if there's something you take away from, we're going to talk about the whole process of, you know, you've just heard a little bit about how we first heard about it, but you're also going to hear about the research that we did, how we decided where to do it, how to do it, our experience while on ayahuasca, and some of the
the lessons that we learned.
And the totally.
Because that was the biggest, hugest part.
But I would say that, so there's lessons that we're from our experience on ayahuasca, but there's also lessons and things to take away from leading up to and after, that I really want to make sure that it's very clear that it's not something to take lightly, because it is a powerful, powerful medicine that you take. And so leading up to it, we had to figure out, one, do we really want to do this? Because we've seen, you know, heard stories of how it can go and how some people have had some very powerful experiences that didn't leave them feeling great. And some had some magical experiences that had them feeling fantastic. And so there's obviously all kinds of different options that can happen for you. But for us, we ultimately decided that it was something that we felt could help on our personal growth journey and learning more about who we are as people. And
I was really nervous.
Totally. You're not the only one.
I think nervous.
Most people are. Yeah.
I was really nervous going into it, but you especially did a lot of research into where we were going to do it.
I wanted to make sure that it was something that was safe and they were looking out for our best interest. Because you hear these horror stories of these pop-up shamans that, you know, they come and they give you the medicine, you take it, and you're kind of left to your own devices, and things don't go well. And so I wanted to make sure that was not our experience. And so we did some research, and we found a retreat center that's a very reputable. It had lots of reviews, and it had doctors on site. It had a psychologist on site. It had shamans and healers. It had nurses. It had a medical room with oxygen and some medicines, and they would take your vitals before, during, after to make sure that you were doing okay on it. There was so many protocols, and it was, I got a really great feeling for it, that it felt like this was the right place. So if there's anything you take away from, making the decision on whether to do ayahuasca, I would say do the research and be comfortable with who you're going to be, who's going to be administering it, and where you're going to be, and is it going to give you that feeling of safety and security? Are they going to be looking out for your best interest?
Because we liked that combination of the traditional and Western medicine there together. And so that's how we ended up specifically in Peru, because that's where the retreat was.
And what was really great about them was that they gave you guidance, lots of guidance, prep work, things to do so that you got the best experience possible from ayahuasca. So they send you things to restrict your diet for 2 weeks out. So for example, no pork, because pork, I guess, mixes with the medicine and it makes you not feel so good for quite a while. So they want you to be no pork and different things like that. So it really
by the end of
like
it, we were just having chicken and white rice, basically.
Literally chicken and rice leading. Yeah. So 2 weeks, they give you restrictions, then they restrict it even more for a week. And then it's go time. On the day of, it's just fruit.
I was pretty hungry.
Yeah. But they want you to have the best experience possible, which is really great. So I would say do the research. The next thing was we were doing it for a very specific reason. We wanted to do ayahuasca, but it wasn't just let's go get high. It wasn't what this was. It was let's go learn about who we are as people and why we are the way we are, and maybe there's some real lessons we can pull from this experience. And so go in with an intention. What is it that you want out of this? What do you want out of this? And have that in front of mind as you're going through this experience.
And it helps to have that to focus on too, I find, because it's a little nerve-wracking at the beginning. And so as you're going through the day leading up to, and then when the ceremony and everything starts, having that intention in your mind helps keep you focused and keeps your mind from going to all these crazy places. Because I was, I was for sure nervous of how I would react to the whole thing. All the documentaries we saw, people get sick, and I hate getting sick, and mentally how was I going to react to it. And so having the intention, refocusing on why I was there, was a really strong grounding for me as we got going.
And then obviously we traveled to the retreat center, as the days got closer, and we were just eating chicken and rice, and then the day of you wake up and you just have fruit essentially for the whole day, and then you get to the retreat center and they treat you pretty well, and they walk you through the holes. It's such a beautiful
It was
place.
gorgeous.
Oh my gosh. Right in the Sacred Valley, right in the middle of the mountains. We're down in this valley looking at literally on all sides of you, mountains everywhere. It's so beautiful.
Gorgeous. Yeah. That helped a lot.
Totally. It was such a serene, peaceful place. It really helped. But when you get there, they you get introduced to the shaman and the healers, and you have time to ask questions, and they answer your questions, and they go through this whole process of what the night's gonna look like, and they walk you through it, and it was really great. And then we get to the place where you're actually going to do the ayahuasca, and it's like this round room with single beds kind of
all around
spaced out around. There's about 12 people, I think, in our session.
Yep.
And, there's a shaman and a couple of healers, the psychologist, the nurse, the doctor. They're all around. They're all there. They're all monitoring and checking on you. And then, so you get into the room and you do this hour-long meditation and
kind of just prepping you.
Yeah. And
mentally.
then it's time to get in your little bed, and they give you a shot glass with what looks
medicine?
like motor oil in it.
Yeah.
It's this thick,
It tastes awful.
dark liquid that I felt it was kind of earthy, and it had a little hint of like black licorice almost type flavor, but like dirt.
Yeah, it was awful.
It was tough to get down, but not as bad as I thought it was going to be from what I had heard.
It's true. Yeah. It's
So
still pretty bad.
Yeah, and they give you a shot glass, so you down it, and then
you wait.
And then you wait. It's I think it was about an hour.
Yeah.
And we could talk about our experience. So why don't you go first? Talk about your experience.
So we did 2 ceremonies.
That's right. It was a 3-day,
3-day, 2-night.
and the 2 ceremonies. You
Yeah.
can do a 3-night, a 5-night, which has 3 ceremonies, or a 7-day, which
has
is
5.
5 ceremonies.
So we opted for the shortest
The short one. Yeah.
2.
Yeah.
I wasn't even sure I wanted to do 2, to be honest, when we were booking it. 1 was probably enough. So the first night was interesting for me. I took the medicine and waited and waited and waited, and I knew that they were coming around after an hour to check and see how our experience was going. The psychologist was going to come around, and I wore my watch that night, and so I was really keeping track of how long everything sort of took for my night to unfold. But he got to me around an hour and a half, and I felt nothing to that point. It felt like everyone else in the room was starting to have some level of experience. You know, you can hear someone getting sick. You can hear someone having their experience over on the side. Like everyone was seemed like everyone had stuff going on. I was feeling no change, absolutely nothing. I was sitting up in my little cot, and there was one lit candle in an otherwise very dark room. And I just was focused on that flame and my intention, and I felt nothing. So when he came around, I told him, he's like, well, maybe we'll give you a little bit more. And I was like, a really, really little bit more. So he came over just a little bit more. I took that, and it didn't take long after that to start having a very uncomfortable experience. I started to feel very sick. And as they had told us, you're probably going to throw up, and that's medicine working. It's purging,
It's a good thing.
It's a good thing. That's when everything really starts.
Yeah.
So the throwing up is sort of the first thing. And so I started to feel very, very sick not long after my little extra. And one of the healers came over, and she sang and chanted at the foot of my bed. And I don't remember any specific visions, but there was just lights and a lot going on.
Yeah.
And I felt horrible and just kind of eventually fell asleep for a bit. And then I woke up and felt amazing. It was just euphoric.
Yeah.
Like it was fabulous.
Yeah.
And I could talk to you for a few minutes beside me, and I felt great. Someone asked if I would do it again. And in that moment, I was like, hell yeah, this is wonderful. Like I just felt amazing, and I had these moments of really intense gratitude. Like I could see some of the shit that I'd gone through in my life from the lens of thank God that happened to me.
Yeah.
Because otherwise I wouldn't be living the life I'm living. And I was crying tears of gratitude seeing all the shitty experiences in my life, because it brought me to exactly where I am, which I'm super grateful for. And so it was just this really intense gratitude in my life. And then after about an hour, that euphoria started to turn, and the rest of the night was really, really bad.
Challenging.
Yeah. It was, the ceremony started, I think, around 7.
7, yeah.
And so
That's when the
meditation started.
meditation, and then I think we took the medicine around 8.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I think some people were starting to leave around midnight, 11, 12. People were
I think
starting
about
to leave.
midnight, yeah.
By about 1, I think, I was still really unable to function. The doctor came, took my vitals, and I ended up going and laying down on the bed.
Your vitals were fine. You just weren't feeling well.
My vitals were great.
Yeah. You just
I
weren't
just
feeling
felt
well.
like
Yeah.
shit.
Yeah.
I couldn't. So I laid down in the medical bed, and you laid with me, and I had a really difficult night. It lasted a very, very long time.
Yeah. For context, most people were gone by probably 2. You stayed until 7 a.m. You stayed there until 7, Yeah.
So that was my first night.
That was your first night. So what were the big lessons on the first night?
Gratitude.
Yeah.
I really got a strong...
Really, you honed in on
Oh my God, it was such a strong... You don't always realize it in the moment, how these... Generally, you can be appreciative and grateful for the good times. Yeah. It's really hard to be grateful for the really bad times in the moment. But I got a really clear vision of how important all those bad times were to get me to where I needed to be. And so gratitude for the shit was a big lesson from the first night. Yeah. And then when I got up that morning, when I eventually made my way back, we left the medical facility and went back to our rooms. because we were in separate rooms. Boys and girls were separated, so that was a bummer. But we went back to our rooms, and I was really struggling with, am I going to do this again tonight? Because
so hold that thought. That's a
Okay.
cliffhanger for you.
okay.
So then that was your first night. And
Yeah.
then, so my experience was a little bit different than yours. On the first night, we got to the point where they gave us the medicine. When it took you an hour and a half and you weren't feeling it, I think it was about an hour in, I started to get this weird feeling of almost like I was floating a little bit. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I realized that tears were just pouring out of my eyeballs. Like my face was soaked. I was crying so much, but I was so happy. It was like tears of gratitude. Similar to you, I had this feeling of, I'm so grateful to be in this place, going through this experience. I'm in this beautiful place. Like it's breathtaking, literally like
It
it's
was
such a
gorgeous, yeah.
beautiful place. Like I don't know if I've been in any place that was more breathtaking than that. And I'm in this place and I get to have this experience. And it was just tears of gratitude, and similar with like all kinds of thoughts of things that I've gone through, but the good, the bad, and how it got me here, and how I'm super grateful for all of it. And it was a kaleidoscope of colors and shapes and weird things happening in my visions. And it was just weird. And then I just started to not feel good. I started to get sick. So the purging comes at different times for people. Sometimes it's like the first thing. Sometimes it's partway through.
Sometimes, like me, it doesn't happen at all.
Yeah, you didn't get sick at all, but I did. And boy, did I. Lots. Like it just kept purging and purging and purging. And this may be too much information for folks, but for the full experience, so you understand if this is something you're contemplating or something that you're thinking about doing, you get the full meal deal. To the point where there was so much that I had run out of actually producing anything, and I was like just
Dry
going
heaving.
through the motions, but nothing was coming. And that was the worst part.
Yeah, dry heaving is the worst.
That was the worst part. But I got through it. I have a lot of little nicks and injuries and things that have come up in my life. And weirdly, while on this medicine, those different injuries, like I've dislocated this shoulder several times, and it would just start twitching. Like weirdly, it would just twitch, and I still have a little bit of a lingering sprained finger that's kind of sore, and that would twitch. And I get muscle cramps in my legs. Like I haven't figured that out. I have a deficiency in some electrolyte or something that I've been dealing with when we're running. And my legs were twitching, and I was almost getting cramps in my leg. Like, it was just so fascinating. And they tell you at the front, like all these things that you're going through, the medicine's working through your body, and it like focuses on areas that need attention. And so I found that was weird, that different body parts were shaking and vibrating, but they were the same ones that I had
injured previously.
Yeah, my attention goes to them day to day, the odd time with injuries and stuff. And then I, at some point, was getting a sense from what you were up to, because you were, what, 5 feet, maybe 4 feet?
Yeah, 4 or 5 feet for sure.
In the next bed over. And obviously I'm concerned about what you're up to and how you're experiencing this. And I can tell at a certain point you're not doing super well.
No.
Like you're struggling, and I can see that. And my brain goes to, but I want to take that away. I don't want you to feel that. Almost like, give it to me. Give me whatever she's going through right now. Give that to me, so I'll take it. But then eventually I came to this realization of like, but that would be robbing you of an experience of going through a challenging time and getting on the other side of it. And also, it just came to me that you're capable of getting through this. Like, you don't need me. As much as I would love to, support you and get you, but you don't need me.
I would have happily given it to you in that moment.
No doubt. Yeah, you were struggling.
Yeah.
But the realization, the epiphany that I got was like, it was coming from almost like a place of ego. Like, I have to protect you. But I actually, in this moment, I don't. Like, this is your journey. This is your situation to get through. And there's no one I know that's more capable to push through this than you. And so I don't actually need to be inserting myself in this. And it was almost like this epiphany of, you don't need to do that for her. She's capable, and this is her journey, and you'd be robbing her of going through that experience if you jumped in and tried to save the day. And she's not asking you to. She doesn't need you to. So buzz off. Mind your business. But that was an epiphany I got. And I thought that was a really cool, eye-opening learning that I hadn't really considered that point of view before.
Right. And it's interesting because one of my big takeaways from this whole experience, both nights, is I'm stronger than I think I am.
Yeah, you are.
When I was struggling, when we were in that medical bed after most people had left, and I was crying and miserable and wanted to go home and wanted this to be over, and like, it was fucking brutal.
Yeah.
But I made it through.
Yeah, totally.
Like, I came out the other side of it.
Yeah.
So if I can get through that, I'll get
anything.
through all of it.
Yeah. And so I would say then that towards the end of my journey that night, I then joined you on yours. But the end of my journey, was, I don't know, 1 o'clock, maybe 2 o'clock, 1:30, something like that. And I felt just like a newborn baby deer. When I got up, I didn't have sea legs. I was just wobbly.
Yeah.
And the shaman or someone helped me to the door and got me kind of situated. And then I was starving. Starving because we hadn't eaten in 24 hours. The only thing we had was a piece of fruit 12 hours before.
Yeah,
or
you have to
something.
stop eating at 2 p.m.
Yeah,
or something.
yeah.
So you had not even had a piece of fruit in 12 hours.
Yeah, and so I ate a couple pears. They had some pears, some fruit there for us and stuff. And then you weren't feeling well, so I joined you. But that was the first night.
And so that morning I was struggling with the decision to whether or not to do it again, because the invitation had been extended that you don't have to do it. And if you don't do it, you get supper.
Yeah.
Which was,
you
could get to eat.
Yeah.
But also, it's funny, what we learned in some of the documentaries and then the research we did was traditionally regular people didn't actually ever take the ayahuasca.
Shamans.
The shaman took the ayahuasca on your behalf and imparted the wisdom to you from that experience.
Because I don't think we've talked about this at all. The shaman and the healers play a very important role in the ceremony, and they're there, and people are going through these different experiences.
And they're taking the medicine too.
They take the medicine, but they're also seeing what you're going through. So they see things that we don't see as regular individuals. Like, they're seeing darkness or light or heaviness they're seeing all these things that you're dealing with. And so if they see you struggling with something, if they see a dark cloud or whatever it is they see, they comment at the end of your bed and they chant,
which happened to me the first night.
and I'm gonna get into my experience in the second night, but they start chanting and whatever, it helped to dissipate that negative energy that you're dealing with. And so that's really fascinating. So
traditionally the shamans took the medicine, not people.
Yeah.
And so the other option, if you didn't want to do it the second night, was you could be in the room.
Yeah.
And the shamans and the healers would take the medicine, and you could still be part of the experience with taking the medicine yourself.
Yeah.
And so I was trying to decide what I wanted to do, and I was leaning towards not doing it the second night because I was just fresh out of my really miserable experience.
But before you get to what you decide, that day, what did we do? There's it's not just ayahuasca that you do at these retreats.
Right. Yeah, we volunteered. We went to a kindergarten.
Which is a really cool. So this was part of this retreat center. They give back to the community. So in the surrounding area around this is pretty isolated, but there's towns, within half an hour or so. Yeah. We went to a little Peruvian elementary school and hung out with kids.
Played with kids for an afternoon. That was really fun. Yeah, it was great. And so, and then it was after that I had to have my decision. We had a debrief, and I had decided going into the debrief that I was going to do it, but I had been leaning away from doing it because I was afraid to have a similar experience again.
What changed your mind?
I did not want to relive night one for a second time. And am I some kind of masochist to put myself through this again, knowing what I went through on night one? And so that's what was going through my head. Why would I set myself up for failure like this?
What changed?
And then I just had a moment of clarity that I'm making this decision based on fear. Like I just said, I'm afraid I'm going to have a situation, an experience like I had the first night, second night. I'm afraid of reliving this experience. I'm afraid. And suddenly I just became aware that that's my my self-talk was, I'm afraid of this. Am I going to make a decision based on fear? It's so obviously based on fear. And it's like, I came all this way to have this experience, and I'm learning, like it or like the experience or not, I'm learning a lot from it. And so I decided that I would do it again. I would take less medicine this time, and definitely not top up after the first hour and a half if I wasn't feeling it.
So you also learned patience.
Yeah. And it was interesting. We did a debrief before the second night, and we kind of were grouped off into groups, and you and I weren't together. And
they were really trying to keep us apart at this retreat.
They were, yeah. Totally. And so we were in different groups, and my group had two people that I, didn't know in it. And we talked about our experience, and both of them fed back to me the same message in different ways. But they told me to leave my watch at home because I was living too much in my head on the first night. I was trying to logic my way through it. I was trying to understand it.
That doesn't sound like you.
I know, right? Like, it's exactly me. And so leave my watch out so that I'm less paying attention to that and I'm more living in the moment, and so that I can feel what's going on. That I need to let myself feel what's happening. And so that was my intention coming into the second night, was to just, it's going to be what it's going to be. I'm going to feel it. I'm going to feel it all. And so I told the psychologist I wanted 3/4 of a shot this time instead of a full shot. And then I changed my mind and said I wanted half a shot, but he still gave me 3/4. And so we're supposed to take the whole shot when we get it. And I didn't. I left a little tiny bit at the bottom to make it more like a half than 3/4. And I had a milder experience for sure. And it did not last all night like the previous night. And it was interesting. I didn't really notice much happening until the healer came to the foot of my bed and started singing and chanting. And then all of a sudden, I couldn't stop crying, just sobbing, and couldn't stop. And I don't know how long she was at the foot of my bed because I did not wear my watch. Yeah. But it felt like it was quite a while until I just had nothing left in me. Like I felt it all came out, and it was in my mind. It was almost like I was grieving for the old versions of me that had to die to grow into the person I need to be. And it sounds like super woo-woo and super, I forget the word I'm looking for, but it was just this weird feeling of grieve all of those versions of you so that you can just leave them in the past. And I didn't purge again. Yeah. There was no physical.
You never ever did get sick.
I never did get sick from the medicine, but I feel like
you're a machine.
The crying was the purge. Like I feel like I purged it out my eyeballs in the second night because by 11:30 or so I was good to go.
Your immune system is well built, and just like your digestive system is well built and didn't need to purge it. It just
I would have loved
like a machine.
I would have loved to have purged the first night. Yeah. I would have felt a lot better, a lot faster if I could have purged. Yeah. But for me, the lesson from the second night was when I let myself feel it, when I cried and just let that whatever, I don't know what she was chanting, but whatever she was chanting brought it out of me. Yeah. And when I let myself feel it, it passed. Yeah. It passed through me. And so I've got a tendency to avoid things I don't want to feel, and that makes it last longer. And so this was one of the lessons I talked about in terms of our 2023 lessons. And we talked about like being the bison and running into the storm as opposed to being the cow and running away from the storm. Let yourself feel it so that it will pass through you and go, as opposed to trying to avoid the feeling and having it stick around. That was my
second night.
Yeah.
My second night was very different than my first night. My first night, I would say, was more euphoric, happy, gratitude. Second night started off way darker, way different. It's interesting because it was the same medicine, same batch, and like that can happen, right? Like we heard, like 1 minute, you'll get one experience one night and a completely different one another night. And can confirm. Yeah, the second night, I also took a little bit less. The first night, it was a full shot. Second night was probably 3/4. And it took about the same amount of time to kick in. But instead of the kaleidoscope of colors and happiness and gratitude, it was scenes of death and darkness and demons. And there was like a scene out of Saw, like a Saw movie, where there was like body parts going through a shredder. Like it was, and it was all these visions on like almost like
conveyor belt
on a conveyor belt flashing before me, going across my face, like just different visions. And some of them were kind of rolling off the screen or whatever, but they were just kind of rolling by. And it was scary as shit. I'm not going to lie. But I went in with the intention of whatever it is, just hang with it. There's something here. Feel it. Understand what is it? What can I learn from this? What am I supposed to get from this? And so I was kind of having that intention of, seeing these body parts and darkness and weirdness. And then all of a sudden, the last scene of the slideshow, instead of rolling off the screen, it kind of turned. And behind it was like this puppet master. Like it was like this,
you got a behind
like
the
monster.
scenes
It was like this monster, like this, I can't remember exactly. It was like a monster or a dragon or something, scary looking teeth and all that. But it turned around, and behind the scenes was this like guy mechanically operating the thing. And so the message that I took was these things that we're afraid of, these fears that we have in our life, like they're not real. They're not an actual thing. They're a figment of our imagination. They're just how we feel about a certain thing, what we believe about a certain thing. It was just this puppet master. This fear was just this normal guy. It wasn't anything to actually be afraid of. So that was one of the big lessons I took from that. That was one of the first scenes. And then I began to feel sick, but I didn't actually purge the second night. But I did feel like I had to go to the bathroom. So and the night before I hadn't gotten up early in the ceremony like I did this night. Way wobblier on my legs. Way wobblier. And so anyway,
they have people who escort
you.
Yeah,
I got help to the bathroom, but I, I didn't get sick. And so a little bit different that way. And then I came back and I struggled more throughout the night. It was these negative thoughts and feelings kept coming over me. And the first night, the healers, they would swing by, I would say. They would sit at the foot of the bed and they would chant for a minute or two, but they moved on, and which I took as I didn't need them. They didn't think that I needed them, so they would move on to someone else who was struggling more. The second night, I feel like they camped out at the end of my bed. Like I think that they could sense some real darkness and negativity and weird vibes coming from me, and they would chant and chant and chant, and one even lit up some sort of smoke, like cigarette thing, and was blowing smoke on me, trying to clear the negative energy from me, because I was going through some stuff. And eventually, as they were doing that, I started to feel the gratitude and the love. Like I don't even know this person, but she has dedicated herself to doing this, and she's come to the foot of my bed, knows that doesn't know me from anyone, sees that I'm struggling, and is trying to do whatever she can to get me out of that struggle. Like it's just an act of love, and I was just so grateful to have her, this person I may never meet ever again in my life.
Likely won't.
Who knows? But yeah, just doing everything she can, blowing smoke, chanting, doing all these things, and it felt like I just had this real sense of gratitude wash over me, and I felt the love. But eventually she made her way around the room, and another healer came, and when she was chanting at the foot of my bed, it started to turn things from really, really negative to more positive and upbeat. And I actually, when she was chanting, there was something about how she was singing, like I couldn't stop moving, like wiggling my hips, like dancing. My hips would just shake and move. Hips don't lie. They were just moving to her chant, and I couldn't stop it. It was weird. I couldn't stop the dancing, the twitching, the moving and jiving. And so that was most of the second night experience.
And so we spent some time the morning after each ceremony journaling our experience. And I ended up with a few key takeaways, most of which I've talked about, but just the intense gratitude for you, for our life, for our relationship, for where my life is. I also, one of my takeaways is I'm a lot stronger than I give myself credit for. I'm stronger than I think I am. And I learned that through this whole experience. I also came through with a strong sense of forgiveness. Going back to that intense gratitude I felt for all the shit I dealt with, it really helped me move through forgiving people who've hurt me. People like, people I trusted, people I didn't, but the shitty experiences I had, like I said, I was grateful for them because I got here. And so it made it a lot easier to forgive and move on when you get that sort of gratitude for them. And then the last takeaway was that I need to trust myself more. Less thinking, less analyzing in my head, more feeling in my body. Feel the feelings when they come up, name them, figure out where I'm feeling them in my body, and then just feel it until it passes. Trust myself. So those are my main takeaways from the whole experience.
Nice. Yeah, mine were, the first night was more positive and appeared, quote unquote, appeared like the better experience and the more positive experience. But I felt really gross the next day. I didn't really talk much about that, but when we went to the school,
you felt a bit hungover.
I felt hungover. I felt low energy. I felt like I didn't get a lot of rest, but I felt really poorly the next day. And that's actually why I took less, because I thought, geez, this, I don't want to feel like this tomorrow. And because at that school with the kids, as much as I had a great time, I wasn't my best self. I didn't feel great. And so I was lethargic, and, on the surface, it appeared that the first night was the better experience. And the second night, when you face value, just the experiences alone at night, the second experience seemed way more negative, like death and all that, just not fun stuff to see. And I guess it reinforced was, to your point, the gratitude, all of it, both the positive and the negative. I came away with this really strong sense of gratitude and love that I pulled from that negative experience, quote unquote negative experience. And, the lesson that I pulled from that, knowing that the fears aren't real and that it's just all made up by me and that I have everything inside of me to get through them. It's all up to me. It's just how you believe or feel about a certain thing. Like, you can push through that. And then it gave me a sense of that I was on the right path, that I was moving in the right direction. I was doing the right things and trying to understand more about myself and this personal growth journey and, serving and love and wanting to make the world a better place. Like, that's all, you're on the right path. Like, that's the kind of the message I received, even from the negative experience, even though it didn't feel good. It's what I walked away from. So I actually felt good after the fact.
Yeah, it's like me too.
Yeah, pulling the lessons out made me feel a lot better. And the next day, after the second night, I felt way better. Like, I felt refreshed and relaxed, and I don't know, even though in the moment it felt like, oh, this is the worst. What am I doing here? Like, I should have stopped after the first night because it felt good and it was euphoric and it was great. And then the second night, this death and all this nonsense. I don't why'd I sign up for this? But the next day made it all worthwhile. Yeah.
I agree. The whole, like I said, I didn't have a very good first night experience physically, but I learned a lot about myself.
Yeah.
Over those 2 nights and 3 days. And
I don't know if it's for everybody, but from my experience, I would say if you're on the fence, do your research and do what feels right for you. But I would recommend it. My experience was good enough that I would, if anyone said, should I do it? Obviously that's a personal choice, but based on my experience,
but I don't regret my experience.
I would say everybody should strongly consider it. Do what's best for you. But I would consider it because you can learn a lot about yourself. And I'm not opposed to doing it again.
And some of the people that we did it with had
some extraordinary experiences.
Yeah. like really, really extraordinary.
Yeah, we won't get into
experience.
too
I
many
won't-
details,
no.
but there was some trauma. There was some real trauma that people felt like they had made some really great progress on in just 2 sessions. I think they stayed longer, but but we were gone. In the 2 sessions, they had gone through, it felt like years worth of therapy in 2 sessions.
And from the outside looking in, their experience seemed difficult,
yeah,
but they were
they were
They loved
excited
it.
about
Yeah.
more and to see what the
Yeah.
the rest of the
so
experience had
it
for
was
them.
a very enlightening experience. I learned a lot about myself. I do not regret it. I'm quite grateful that I was brave enough to do it, and so I'm glad to do it. And I would definitely think about doing it again.
Yeah. So anyway, that was our ayahuasca experience. We wanted to just share that in case anyone's on the fence with that, or maybe they had never even heard of it.
Even just the lessons, like I think the value of it is, like the value of listening to us talk about it is not necessarily the ayahuasca part, unless you're really interested in the ayahuasca part. But the best part of this podcast, I think, this episode, is
You get
what
to-
we learned.
And like that's the whole purpose of this is to we have experiences as we go through life and we get to share them, and some people will take those lessons and learn from them and not have to have the scars from the experience itself. They get to take the lesson, which is the good part, without having to go through the bad part. And so take from it what you will, but if you want to have your own experience and go through some of the scars, then that's cool too.
Yeah. So that was our
Ayahuasca experience in Peru.
Yeah.
So again, as always, if you got any value from this, if there was one thing we would ask is if you could write a
Subscribe,
review, subscribe, like,
share the
it,
episode with someone who you know might be interested in ayahuasca or the lessons.
all that good stuff. It all helps with our mission of helping as many people as we can. So, all right, folks,
We'll talk to you next week.
talk to you next time.
Road of life, yes, you own